they now able to hear?
It's not streaming.
Well, we can see them,
All right.
so it is streaming.
Okay. Okay, so again, back to the annexation and de-annexation issues, kind of summarize the area that's inside and outside the city limits. The portion of the property that is inside the city, the 177 acres, would remain in the city until the applicant's obligation for Toll Bridge Road is satisfied. And at that point in time, it would be de-annexed. One of the other components of the agreement is that all future owners would agree to a strategic partnership agreement, which would waive rights to oppose future annexation when the MUD bonds are paid off if the city desires to annex the property at that time. And this is a overall view of the entire vicinity of the site, with the area here being, sorry, this area here being the applicant's request and property. You can see the yellow area is the area that's outside the city limits. That's the ETJ portion. The area along the river in purple is the area that is inside the city limits right now. And this map also shows the proposed water line coming down Toll Bridge Road and the proposed sewer line that is proposed to serve the property as a part of our infrastructure issues, which I'll be talking about in just a minute to kind of bring everybody up to speed on what's proposed. So significant piece of property, obviously, for development adjacent and on the east side of I-35. This property is located in Belton's CCN. That's the area that we're obligated to serve the property if it is available for utilities. And as you know, we are planning to do that. The water line is under construction right now along Toll Bridge Road. The sewer line is designed and all the easements have been secured except for one, and we're preparing to bid that following the recordation of that easement. The water and sewer will serve the development, and the sewer lift station will be located on the property of the applicant as it's currently designed. And there's been an agreement to the maximum number of homes proposed on the site. Get rid of that. Okay. So in terms of the development plans, the developer is planning 1,775 homes on the property or single family equivalents. That's a density of about 3.7 units per acre gross compared to 2.7 that's provided for in the Three Creeks plan, just as way of comparison. We have seen a conceptual master plan, and the developer will show that again tonight, but no detailed plans at this point in time. The process for this request, if the council approves the plan as submitted, the concept plan, is that they would come in with a preliminary plat, a master plan on the entire area, and then submit phases of plat for P&Z, council, and Bell County, obviously, because this is a substantial area in the ETJ. Those plans would need to conform to our thoroughfare plan, our city standards for street, right-of-ways, and utilities. Streets and drainage would be Bell County's responsibility, and the water and sewer would be our responsibility. The applicant is proposing a minimum lot width of 50 feet. And with some information I provided you just late this afternoon, they are proposing a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet and an overall depth of 100 feet. So 50 by 100, minimum 5,000 square feet, similar to what is provided for in the Three Creeks development. Design standards are another component that there's been a lot of work on this afternoon, and you have a copy of that. Again, it tracks very closely to the Three Creeks development that you will see. And again, the MUD agreement and the city subdivision standards are the principal mechanisms to guide development if this is to be a MUD and a development actually outside the city limits, since the traditional building permit and design standards would not be in effect. The water and sewer capacity reservation, with the number of homes proposed, the applicant certainly wants a commitment to the availability for sewer and water, and they are receiving that commitment by us in this proposal, and are similarly making a contribution to the water and sewer capacity, $1.9 million for sewer and just under $400,000 for water capacity reservation. And that payment would occur in conjunction with pro rata share toward each of those, water and sewer, with each final plat, and each lot and each final plat will be paid at the time of final plat approval. On Toll Bridge Road, the applicant is responsible for the design and construction of the road from their south property line up to Shanklin. The applicant will dedicate the right-of-way needed, their 1/2 share for the street at no cost to the city, and then the city will be responsible for acquiring the right-of-way for the balance of Toll Bridge Road from the other property owners in the vicinity. These next two exhibits show the proposal for Toll Bridge Road. Adjacent to their property, the applicant will build a 3-lane section, 2 travel lanes and a center turn lane, as well as a trail on the east side, a 10-foot trail on the east side, adjacent to their property. So significant commitment by the developer to do that. That cost estimate is $2.2 million, and that would be designed, funded, and construction with the first final plat phase of their development. That's phase 1 of Toll Bridge Road. On phase 2 of Toll Bridge Road, this is a little bit more related to the development scheduling of what happens. Their obligation for Toll Bridge Road in this vicinity would be a 2-lane section from their north property line up to Shanklin, north to Shanklin. The opportunity for continuing the center turn lane would be at our discretion. We will have required the right-of-way to do that, and that'll be at our discretion based on funding, basically, and we'll come back to the council on that. And the phasing for that would be a set aside of $2,000 for each lot from the 351st lot to the end of the development. That money would be put in escrow to be reimbursed to the developer for the construction of phase 2. That portion from the north property line of River Farm to Shanklin is estimated at about $2.8 million. Again, 2 lanes and no trail. Some financial considerations just for the council's awareness, and as we go through this process of evaluating a municipal utility district, certainly the rooftops in River Farms will generate market demand for nearby retail services, and certainly that would be a very positive for the city if those services are located inside the city limits. The revenue for River Farms residential water and sewer consumption would be at 125% of the city rate because those folks are outside the city limits and benefiting from our utility infrastructure. The city, with this kind of a development being outside the city limits, would be relieved of any requirement or obligation for city services or facilities to go into this area, particularly police and fire and public works, street maintenance and street lighting, except for the fact that since these are our utilities, we would have some obligation to set meters and to repair meters and deal with those kinds of issues, meters, taps, meter replacement, reading the meters and so forth, disconnects, and of course inspections to satisfy TCEQ requirement for plumbing and connection to the city's water and sewer system. We would anticipate being fully compensated for all services provided with rates that are flexible for future increases by the city council as time goes on. Clearly, one of the significant components of this request is that the city would not receive property taxes from the River Farms development because the property in its initial phases and then ultimately when the other portion is de-annexed would not be inside the city limits. It would not be beneficiary of city property taxes to the general fund. One other consideration is just the fact of precedent that there might be a request for other adjacent properties to request de-annexation or consideration of a MUD in the future as a result. I've given you a 1-page summary of this information basically that we've shared with the applicants this afternoon to give them a sense of trying to capture full recovery of our expenses basically as this project goes on. We put in the table all the commitments that are being made by the applicant, and you can see those. First, the water capacity reservation and sewer capacity reservation totaling about $2.31 million on again, a per lot basis as development occurs in conjunction with final plat approval. So Roman number 1 is the fees that are in the current draft agreement for the water and sewer. Roman numeral 2 has to do with other fee considerations that we have been discussing that relate to water and sewer tap fees, plumbing inspections, inspections for the TCEQ requirement, the customer service inspection, and then irrigation permits, which are pretty common in this area. So these are estimates based upon our current rates of water and sewer tap, and they're summarized basically to give you an idea about what that would be, about $1,660 per lot, and then over the entire 1,775 lots, just under $3 million. So a significant contribution based on the work and the things that we would be doing, facilitating our utility system and providing that for this area just outside the city limits. Again, these are standard fees. If it's a bigger meter that might be required, then those rates in our rate schedule would be applicable, subject to 125% of the city rate. And then the bottom half of that summary page talks about the commitment by the developer on Toll Bridge Road. The first phase, 2.2 million. The second phase, an escrow consideration, 2.85, for a total of just over $5 million. And then finally, the water and sewer capacity reservation and fees and Toll Bridge Road construction all summed to give you a total picture of the commitment that the developer is proposing at this in conjunction with this development. That's a quick summary of the overall proposal. I wanted to just kind of bring everybody up to speed on that, and particularly with the information that has come this afternoon, today and this afternoon, with the summary of fees that we want to put before the council and certainly have a consideration. And then in addition to that, the two-page summary of design considerations that has been submitted. And I know the applicant will go over that with the overall proposal. Any questions I could answer now? Certainly want to reserve as much time as possible for the applicant and any questions the council might have. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have our presentation to, great, okay, thank you. Well, while he's doing that, I want to thank the council for their time today. We appreciate you spending this time in a workshop. I also, as part of that, want to commend the city staff and the city attorney for all the work and time that they put in to this, to creating, well, just getting us where we are today. I'm sorry, will do. My name is Steve Utley, and I reside in Dallas, Texas, 3816 Colgate, Dallas, Texas, 75225. We have a second home here that we'll be describing here in this, which is 6101 Toll Bridge Road. So just to make sure I say it one more time, I want to thank Sam and Mr. Messer for the time you guys have put in, as well as all the staff time you put into the water and sewer effort, which was very commendable. So with that, just want to tell you that if we can flip to the first slide, second slide. We have taken quite a bit of time in assembling a team that has, that's an award-winning team around the country. In our past workshops that we've done with you, we've showed you some developments that they have put together that show certain aspects of it that we want to emulate here at the River Farms. And we'll get into some of those details in just a minute, but just to say that, you know, I think in third quarter of last year, Marion had the opportunity to go up to Dallas just to see a couple of those developments to see what we were trying to describe verbally, and I think she was impressed. Anyway, these guys have been very good in helping us get to where we want to go, which is the Utley family. And let me go to the next slide. And the Utley family has owned this property for over 30 years. As Sam described, this is a 482 acre piece of property. Fortunately, we've got rolling hills on the east side of 35 here that really lay out a really, what we think in certain areas, spectacular piece of property. We've got 3.5 miles of river frontage on the Lampasas River, and I wish you all could have been there this past weekend when the snow was on the ground. It was just absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. As you can see, it's centrally located, but I think the location's very important in that there is, we have not seen single-family development to this size on the south side of Belton, and it's particularly the southeast side of Belton. And this creates, this development creates that opportunity. We're not very far from the future Belton High School and the middle school campus off 121 and Shanklin that y'all have, that the city, that the independent school districts have purchased. And so we're not that far away. And we'll get into one aspect of our development that we have allocated some land for BSD if they have an interest. If they don't, we're okay with that as well. We're located about 4 miles from downtown. So in my next bullet, the vision that the city had to move forward with the design and development of water and sewer in this area, I think is quite visionary. Especially given the lack of development that the city's had on the south side of town. This is really promoted, I think, it promoted our thought. So I'm sure it's promoted the landowners around us and their thoughts. But I got to commend the city on their vision, forward-looking vision on the sewer and the water. Can we go to the next slide, please? I know that there's been some questions about what is this going to look like? And, I'd be more than happy to host every one of you out here someday and walk you around. The Lampasas River is one of the cleaner, prettier rivers in Texas. And there are just so many places around the river that reflect so much beauty. We believe ultimately down the line that these will be, maybe larger lot opportunities. Don't know that today. We do know what the market is today, and that's how we've designed the initial aspects of this development. But here are a few pictures. We can go to the next slide. Our goal as the Utleys have been here for, I think, almost 6 generations. My father's great grandfather was the sheriff here. Belton and Bell County mean a lot to the family, and we want to make sure what we do here remains a legacy asset for years to come. And so it's important to us that it reflect that image. So we want to use the character of this land to really create a beautiful setting for single family only. We're not looking to do multifamily, not looking to do commercial, what we're looking to do is primarily single family or all single family. We want to reserve 10% of the property for a townhome, brownstone, for certain village entries that we'll get into a little later. But our goal is to make this single family only and to use and preserve the land for that distinction. We want to include in this some amenity features that are strong and important, and some exist today. We're looking to take the existing residence and use that as an amenity center. And then along with that, make sure that we have proper, the proper children's play equipment and pool setting and all kinds of things that can make it a nice recreational area. We also obviously want to use the river as an opportunity for a trail to go that'll also be utilized not only by this residential community, but other residential communities, both on the west side of 35 and on the north and south sides of River Farm. But our goal is to get that trail system in along the river. And then the other unique thing about this is that the river allows us to really exceed the open space and park requirements just because there's certain aspects of it we cannot build on. So we think it'll provide a park setting that'll be absolutely beautiful for the entire Belton community to utilize. We have designed the development to have 50-foot lots at this stage because we know that is the market. We think that as time goes on, there will be requests for larger lot sizes around the river, most definitely, and maybe in some other locations. And then last but not least, and I think I'll let, we've got others to present, but we've got one site set aside that's a central location in the development for a potential elementary school if BISD so chooses. So at that, I want to turn it over to my engineer, Brent Murphy, and let him present.
Good afternoon. My name is Brent Murphy. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates. We've had the pleasure to work with the family on this project and with the city, and it's been a real pleasure to take time to walk the property with the family. Spend some time in Belton, get to know, get familiar with, what makes Belton tick. Looking at other communities in Belton. And I want to say thank you to the staff. There's as everybody knows, a lot of time goes into preparing something like this. So we greatly appreciate their efforts and guidance. As Steve's mentioned, as we've looked at the property and the terrain, it lent itself to a vision, if you can pan forward in the presentation. There we go. So as Steve's talked, we've got as we look at the property, we've got Toll Bridge Road, we've got 35, we've got the river that wraps the property, and then looking at the city's thoroughfare plan, there was one thoroughfare that was intended to cross the property. We've represented that in that orange line that runs east-west. So as we look at the footprint, the canvas of the project, we basically got an opportunity to utilize the spaces, the natural spaces of the river, the open space, an opportunity to create a central spot for an elementary school. As we program these things, we want to identify key features that we'd like to keep and maintain the character of. As you're coming in off of Toll Bridge Road, there's a heavy stand of mature trees. We feel like it's a great opportunity to preserve portions of that and let that be a primary entry feature into the community. It's hard to recreate some of these natural features, and so when we can take the time and study them and integrate them and be a key part of plan, I think from day one, it gives a sense of pride of the community, the residents. And so we're trying to keep that, as we studied the property, we tried to keep that mindset throughout. So as we were looking at the plan and trying to create, we really let a lot of the natural amenities drive us to a plan and to a street network that seemed to flow. And so this entry is key for us to maintain and preserve that. As you go further east into the property, we've got some other corridors, some areas along the creek that have some large trees. These are some of the old barns that are still in the property. This is a very neat, good opportunity to integrate some open spaces. I think there's a spot in this area where people, the family over time and could incorporate into the project where you can walk down to the sandbar where the river turns. And there's some features in here that really make this thing very unique. And then as you go around the horn of the river, it's essentially you got multiple places that create these opportunities. On the north side, it's more elevated, and you can see well across multiple properties. And so we've kind of identified some areas over there that we would want to incorporate into the concept. But together, as we look at it, we've identified these key spots. It really, typically when we plan these, we're trying to identify areas too to create pocket parks and trails to link the different communities and make it easy, desirable for people to use those spaces. It's not typically we're seeing now, it's not just having a large space is appealing, it's having a well-programmed space, and it's spaces that are, not more than a 5-minute walk together. See if we can pan forward. There we go. So as you can tell in that previous concept, we've identified some of the key features and trying to link those features in this plan. This entry on the southern end of Toll Bridge Road would be intend to be our primary entry, pulling you into the community and back towards the back of the project. We also have the collector entry that would bring people directly into the community and stub across the creek for future. And then also the school site would be adjacent to that as well. But as you can see, this is intended to represent a collector and a street network of what we would foresee. And this would be roughly right about that 1,775 lots that we discussed. And so you can tell the large amounts of open space that we have programmed throughout the community. As Steve mentioned, the current house, we're trying to incorporate that on the north side as the amenity, as part of the amenity center or the key amenity center for the community. So all these things that we have been talking about, we've proposed in a developer agreement that ties us down and makes those commitments to see the vision and see this thing come to life. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mindy to kind of go through the deal points of the developer agreement, and then we'll probably through some Q&A, be happy to share anything else or answer any other questions. Mindy, do you have I think you're muted.
Oh, how's that?
We're good.
Everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, my name's Mindy Caney. I'm with Coates Rose. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you again. I want to say that the staff has been great. I have appreciated being a part of this project from the beginning. I would like to talk to you now about our next step forward, which would be to put together a draft of the development agreement. We have been working in the background on this draft. The development agreement is the primary step in having this master plan community come to fruition. And so the development agreement is going to contain various items. Sam did a great job of going through most of the terms that this development agreement will have in it. I'll go through a few of those terms that I just want to reiterate and make sure that everyone understands. I feel like this development agreement is going to contain all of the terms that are most important to the city. It's going to have commitments for special regulations for this community. I think y'all might have some questions about those, and Brent may go over those after I finish running through the development agreement. But some of those facts are that there's going to be a maximum of 1,775 homes allowed. 90% of river farms will have a minimum lot width of 50 feet and a minimum lot depth of 100 feet. 10% of the developable land will be higher density and smaller lots. But again, the maximum amount of lots is 1,775. There's going to be masonry minimums that will meet or exceed the Three Creeks community. It's going to comply with the city codes and regulations. The city will be able to inspect our facilities and homes and issue our building permits. The developer is going to be 100% financially responsible for putting in all of the internal facilities, all the internal water lines and sewer lines, and all of those will be conveyed to the city, as the city will be the retail provider. The developer will pay for its share of the offsite water line and sewer line that the city is currently in the process of installing. Tollbridge Road is going to be improved by the developer in 2 stages. It will go all the way from the south side of the River Farms project north up to Shanklin Road. It will be built in 2 phases. The city will agree to consent to the creation of the MUD and the eventual de-annexation of the in-city portion of the property. And that de-annexation won't occur until the entirety of Tollbridge Road has been constructed. The city of Belton is going to be the retail water and sewer provider, and they will charge 125% of the in-city rates. And the city will provide trash, brush, recycling, and they will bill those services to the River Farms community. So those are just high-level concepts that are going to be included in this development agreement. I think Brent, the council is interested in hearing more about one of the exhibits that is going to be included in our development agreement, and that's going to include the design standards. It's a lengthy document. I don't think we want to go through all of it. We've sent it over to Sam, but Brent, do you want to go over just a few of the highlights of that document?
Yeah, so as Mindy mentioned, that was some of the feedback too, is Three Creeks was an example of something that seemed like a consensus of people like some of the design elements in that community. So we've taken what they committed in their agreement and tried to, we mimicked that and made some tweaks that fit to the project, as well as added some additional landscape standards. So I believe everybody's got it, but I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights. If you look at, some of the definitions, we're just holding those are key because of, a lot of the way the houses look and things like that on masonry products and things like that. This is trying to keep consistent with that. So those are pretty straightforward definitions, again, that were identical to Three Creeks. The next section is called design districts. And the first category there is the max lot count. We want to go ahead and make sure we're fully committed. We're not asking for any additional homes over the 1,775, and to get that's a total too. So if we, however, we got 90% of the single family and 10% of this higher density village product, but collectively we're not proposing to exceed 1,775 homes. So we want to make that clear. We also want to make clear, just as in the Three Creeks agreement for the single family residential, they define the minimum lot widths, depths, and square footages. So we've done that, and it's consistent with Three Creeks. It's been mentioned a few times. So it's minimum lot width of 50, minimum lot depth of 100, and minimum square footage of 5,000. The second type of residential product we had proposed was for 10% of the net developable area to be a townhome, patio home type product. And so we've identified that in the standard. And then very similar to Three Creeks, we defined certain corridors. So when we look at communities, if we're along a major road, arterial or collector, there's certain things that we like to design elements that we like to have that sets the tone of the community and really helps maintain some of the look and consistency of the community and theming over time. So one item is on Tollbridge Road. We've got standards for the houses that are backing to Toll Bridge Road. A lot of traffic on Toll Bridge Road. We want the look of the landscaping and screening to be consistent and follow the theming through the community. So we've got requirements for board on board top rail wood fence with masonry columns. We have that spacing defined. We've also put in there that the houses that back to that road will be the back facade will be 100% masonry, and that the roof pitch shall be a minimum of 612. We want to keep that look in that corridor in that manner. And then along Toll Bridge Road, we put additional landscaping standards for the houses that are along that road for plantings that occur on each individual lot. Kind of a second scenario is these how we treat the condition along a collector. So when I say collector, I'm referring to the orange line that I had depicted on that exhibit during my presentation. So that's one of the roads identified on the thoroughfare plan by the city. So there again, we're trying to maintain a certain look. So we've got 100% masonry for homes that do back to it, as well as that same screening section as we would have on Toll Bridge Road. Another element is just our typical residential road. We want to be clear on the percentage of masonry for those. So we've identified percentages that are 100% consistent with Three Creeks, and landscaping standards as well that are consistent with Three Creeks. We did another item. So on the village, this higher density product, we defined masonry standards for it, as well as landscaping standards to ensure a certain type of quality and look for the community. And so that's what we went through and traded emails with Sam today and proposed back to the city. So be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I think that completes our presentation, but we definitely want to leave plenty of room for Q&A. But we thank you.
Mr. Utley, thank you and your staff for the presentation. We're glad you're here. At this time, any questions, comments from the council members?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So I think first, I think what you've presented is as a great vision. I think it's something that allows the city and the surrounding area to grow with quality, to work out agreements between the landowner and the municipality that eventually would have to take over more of the responsibilities. As in all cases, anytime you sign a legal agreement or anything like that, the reason it's there is if there's something that's a problem. We can talk aspirationally, we can talk about what we'd like to see, but what you actually will see was what you shall be required to do in the legal document. And so I think a couple of the concerns, at least that I have, I don't lead with concerns. I just bring out the concerns because this is where we get into the details. I think one is the quality of the development, which you guys have already addressed a lot of those concerns. I think one of the quality issues is the density, which is the second concern. I think the build quality is good. I think the reason I think multifamily or townhomes was thought of is because if you can get the density in the townhomes, then you can have a little bit larger lots in the other. And I understand what you mean about the market. The challenge, I think, in places like this that are real pretty is part of the beautiful aspect of it is the big oak trees. Like when you look at the highway and you see the house that you guys have, you see those oak trees. If you look at it at a bird's eye view or a Google map view of what Three Creeks was before they developed and when they gave us a tour, they went out there, they built a pavilion, we walked around, it's great, gorgeous big oak trees and all that stuff. And you know, 3 weeks later, you look at it and it's gone, right? They just mowed it all down because it's a lot easier for an engineer to just take a 3D thing and do it on a computer and just lay it over the land and get rid of all the things that
I'm
are.
smiling. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm smiling. Yes. Yeah.
So
Right.
that's one of the reasons why density is a concern, because if you don't have to have the density, then you can be a little more creative about this road going here, and maybe that lot's a little bit bigger. And I think again, and I understand the history that you guys have, but none of us live forever, and none of us will control things forever, and nobody in this room will. And so what we have to do is, while you may have a view of what you would like to have, you think there may be larger lot opportunities, that doesn't mean anything.
Mhm.
From a legal standpoint, I mean, from an agreement standpoint, that means not. What it'll be is it'll be 50 by 100 lots. That's where whoever buys the property, unless you guys plan on, and I don't think you guys are going to develop it yourselves. My guess is you'll take it as an opportunity and get with somebody who does that for a living. And
Well,
let
on our
them-
team, we are blessed with the capability of developing.
Okay. So is that going to
One
be in
of-
the contract
well,
that your aspirations that you want to do to develop the property that you will then develop? Because if it's one of those things, well, then, it's more of a personality. But if it's just the land that we're talking about, regardless of who owns it, well, then we need to talk about that and not personal views.
Well, our key is to have flexibility to meet the market where it is, not where we think it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we wanted to have the capability to be a developer, but also be a landowner.
Yep.
And we start from that first. We're a landowner first. We put the capability of development in the team, but also we need the flexibility to be able to sell to another builder
Yep.
or developer.
Yep.
So we have that flexibility is extremely important in what we agree to.
Well, and in any case like that, I mean, you always want to have that, because anytime you have a negotiation, if you've already weakened your negotiation by
Exactly.
putting to someone
That's
else, well,
right.
then you can't pull it back in.
That's
So
right.
the reality is,
But our
anyway.
goal is as a landowner to stay in this as long as we can.
Yep. And so I think I would say the good news about the way this land lays is the areas that are lower, that really are not buildable, that may be a little more damp when it starts to
City.
rain.
Yeah.
Those areas are the ones with the trees, and all the other stuff looks to be like pasture and green space that it's already clear.
Yeah.
So that concern, where Three Creeks was like 100% trees. So again, I just, those were my two concerns coming in. I think the quality of the build, you guys, at least what you've said, is at that Three Creeks standard or better. I think that's really good. I think the comment about 10% being high density kind of brownstone kind of townhomes is something that the market, I think, really needs. And I think that's good. Will give you more flexibility in the lot size. Personally, I'd still like to look at the layout. We've cast visions, but we've not drawn anything. And so we see top lines with a couple of squigglies for roads, but we've not actually put, what is I could say 1775, and that on 100 acres, 500 acres, 10,000 acres. I mean, I don't know what that means.
Well, we actually started off with a lot more. We've dialed it back. So
Mhm.
we've actually come way down on what our
Okay.
our preferred lot count was. But we went if you just look at your market, okay, you've got very little 40s, and you got 50s, 60s, and 70s, but it's all mainly 50s. And so we tried to design to today's market, but tomorrow's market may be different.
And by those numbers, you mean ages of people that buy the houses?
No, not ages, the size.
Lots
Lot-
of.
I'm sorry,
okay.
the lot
All right.
size.
Well,
I'm
that
sorry.
was- yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Just
be
you're
more
using
sp- I'll be
numbers and I'm
clear.
looking for units.
No.
So
50, yeah, the 50,
problem with talking to engineers.
50-foot lots, yes.
It may be the ages too.
But it
So-
does give us the flexibility down the road to merge lots and things like that if the market so demands it. But right now, it's the market.
Well, you can define market however you want. I mean, we look at Dunn's Canyon and River Place.
Yeah.
That's different than what you've just described. And that's a market that there is no inventory. As soon as something's built or for sale, it's sold. Cliffs of Nolan Creek again, and then we've got this other big cul-de-sac, I can't remember, right off of Loop 121, fairly large lot size, and those are moving very quickly. And so I think it's a balance, right? So you don't want all small and you don't want all large. And you don't want all single family, you need multifamily.
Right.
So it's a balance. And so I would say that the 40, 50, 60 is and I'm just going to say it, when you drive through Hutto going to Pflugerville and you look at all the houses that are being built, they're all being built just like that. And every roof looks like every other roof, and every house looks like every other house, every fourth house, right? So you've got a small version, a tall version, a skinny version, a wide version, and repeat every time. A lot of what Belton is not that. A Belton, and I think is, again, I'll use Dunn's Canyon as an example, and Red River, and Regatta Oaks, and all those. And those are unique. I mean, there's similarities, but there's uniqueness. And so I think this is it, kind of hopefully in between. Anyway, but those are my concerns: density and
As you get
quality.
to the river, though, because the river will be the last to be developed, more or less, is the way we've got it planned today. All the river lots, and those will be the ones that will primarily be your larger.
So is that
size
something
lots.
you're willing to put in the development
Not in the
agreement?
development agreement, not
Okay,
now,
well
because
then
it's
that's
not the market.
aspiration. It means
I
nothing.
just
It's
want
hand
you to
waving.
know, though.
You know, I
Where the plans
understand
be,
that,
right.
but the next person we talk to may not be that person and say, well, they never wrote that down and we're not legally
Right.
required to do that. I mean, if that truly is your aspiration, then let's put it down.
Well, it's not
If
the
it's
market.
not, then if you don't want to put it
I'm
down.
not going to put
then
something down I can't sell.
Okay.
Bottom line.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So then then let's not talk about that,
Okay,
because
well,
they will
then we
be 50-foot wide lots by 100, period.
Mhm.
That's what it will be.
Whatever.
Everything else is distraction.
That's what will be in the new agreement.
All right. Thanks.
I mean, that's my primary concern as well. So that brings me to a question. As far as Dawson Ranch, do we know the lot size there for those? I mean, they're not huge, but do we know the width on those?
Negative. I did not measure before I left.
But I think to David's point, there's an in between, and I've seen a lot of bad development, and I've seen some good development. So
A little bit larger. They may be 75 by 120, something like that. I believe they're a little bit larger
okay,
than the minimum of 50 by 100.
I mean that's a lot of, and it kind of came clear. And I know we don't have plat drawn out and real detail, but when you looked at the map with the smaller streets and where the houses will actually be, that's pretty dense. And, I kind of feel like, and I wasn't here, I wasn't involved in Three Creeks decision-making as far as density, but I feel like that's pretty dense. So Three Creeks, while I feel like the quality is pretty good at Three Creeks, and much better than some of our neighboring cities in a similar type development, I don't know that Three Creeks is necessarily the perfect standard here as far as density. So that's my main concern, and it's nothing. Kind of to David's point too. It's nothing personal, and it's nothing saying we think you're trying to put one over on us or do something wrong. It's just the fact that whatever we agree to, we have to live with forever, and you may or may not have to live with that forever. So, I've seen bad building. And so if and when we ever inherit this as a city and it comes into the city limits, whether that's 20, 30, 40 years from now, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're inheriting something and bringing something into the city that's quality, even at that point, because there's some neighborhoods in some other areas, surrounding areas, that after 10 or 15 years, you wouldn't want in your city. or 20 years. I mean, it's crazy how a house can look really nice and a neighborhood can look really nice, but if it's not built well and things aren't right, that in 10, 15, 20 years max, it's horrible and it looks horrible. And I've witnessed that. I've witnessed those developments going up. So that's really what the concern is more about. And like I said, I do feel better about the quality, but I have my major concern is the density. And I know it has to make business sense for you. But I would just encourage maybe a little bit closer look at that, and whether, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it or how I think you should do it, because I'm not the expert on that. But, maybe it's just a thought, but maybe your 10% goes to 15% or 20% or something. That's tweaked to get the residents and the rooftops or the dwellings, but it allows for a little bit less dense lot on the rest of it, or maybe a more of a mix where we do build into the development agreement. Maybe there's some more of those high density, and then some medium density, and then some low density, and it's more built in that way from the get-go, but still gets you what you need. Because I'm not trying to begrudge you what you need to do, but I just would encourage maybe a little closer look at that, and maybe go back to the table and see if there's some tweaking that could be done to get that lot size, bigger and a little less dense, to increase the overall quality. So that's my only concern. Hopefully I worded that to where it makes sense.
Brent, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think that
Thank you, guys.
if we probably can't go back to the presentation, but just kind of address some of the questions. On the property itself, it is mostly pasture land. There are pods of mature trees that we've tried to capture those, and then the heavy tree lines are along the creek. So it really gives us a pretty clean palette to take the areas that are open and have, program our pods in our villages through that, create some open spaces, but then really, preserve some of the areas along the creek and areas that have large clusters of trees. So, we're not densely covered up with trees throughout the project. We're trying to plan these and create a concept that'll be part of the DA that sets the commitment, to preserve some of those areas. So I did want to point that out. It's not it's unique because it's got a lot of these key elements we rarely get to have, but they're in locations where we can preserve them and make them something special in the community. And that, we are committing to do that within this agreement on the concept plan. And regarding the lot size, it's, like Steve said, it's hard to anticipate what the market, where it takes us. What we've seen by studying the market before we started planning, there are a lot of 50s and 60s. And we tend to, when we engineer these, when we start working with developers, and a lot of times we're preserving those creek corridors for that opportunity, because we're trying to capitalize them on several aspects. Either we reserve those for, lots backing. So you've got a premium, you've got something that, somebody has that view from their backyard, from their back patio. Or it's a position you'll see where we've got roads that are single loaded to the creek, where as somebody's driving through that community, now they've kind of got a change of a position and they're looking at the creek in the corridor. And so we like to, a lot of these things with the density, if planned properly, we can pull in these amenities. We can shorten some blocks. We can open up spaces to the creek. We can close them off and create premium. So if you'll look at that concept, all through those corridors, we're kind of varying that look and that feel, because it does continue to give, it is different. It is, utilizing the spaces we have. It's it's building pride. It's allowing to take trails that we can have internally and turn them out to the creek and then pull them back in between houses and common areas and link them up. So there's a lot of effort into the plan to create some variation in that. And it's kind of, I know it's hard to see on this screen, and it's, you know, it's difficult to say through video here, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't see anything.
And if we can go back, I wouldn't mind pointing out some of these elements. If we go back to our presentation, there's the concept master plan.
Chris is bringing that up. Let me just answer Councilmember O'Banion's question. On Loving Trail, the lot sizes are 76 by 125. Pretty typical there.
On
So,
what areas? Sorry.
Loving Trail in Smith Dawson.
Okay, Dawson Ridge.
Right.
Okay.
So,
And how large a development? Sam?
oh gosh, several.
It's about to be up to 640 when the last phase is completed.
640 lots?
640 units. Mhm.
So that's a comparison of 5,000 lots, which is the minimum proposed here, to 9,500. So substantial difference in size. But one of the comments you made was useful. I think the idea of a 10% maximum on the higher density was to try to cut that off. I think your suggestion of increasing that might be encouragement to have more density in the townhouse, more numbers, more area. What they're proposing is about 50 acres. And they say 10% of the 500 acres, about 50 acres. So increasing that might give you the opportunity to have larger lots where that might fit the market.
And I'm not necessarily saying here that it's got to meet Dawson Ranch spec, but maybe there's a in between. And it, you know, a lot of that is determined by the design of the house. And, you know, because Dawson Ranch, it looks pretty dense because of the way the houses are built. And so even if it's a 75-foot wide lot, if you build a house wide in the front, then it looks pretty dense.
Yeah.
So some of it's design of the houses, some of it's, you know, can affect all that. But I'm just saying, maybe there's a middle ground somewhere. Maybe there's an in between, and there's a different mix that gets us to a little bit less overall density.
Well, I do hear what you're saying. It's hard for us to design the unknown. I mean, to some degree, that's where we've set. This is just like an unknown, future unknown. I mean, if we had a buyer for every lot, we knew what they wanted, we'd do it, but we don't. And want to make sure that we, again, design flexibility in the plan to allow you to move, you know, lot sizes if you need to. So
In reality, you're not really designing flexibility. You're constraining the lot size to 50 by 100. So that's a fixed, right? That is a known. We're going to use that as a foundation for designing it, because it's hard to design on a blank sheet of paper. So you've got to start with one primitive, and the primitive is 50 by 100. I think what we're saying is, and you go to San Antonio, you go to Austin, you go to Dallas, a lot of the developments that start getting into this usually have 3 stages or 3 areas, right? You've got sometimes a gated community on a really nice feature of land that have estate lots. They may be 1 to 4 acres, maybe because of the topology. I mean, San Antonio does this a lot, and that may actually be a gated part of the community. And the next one outside of that is kind of these 50 by 100. And the next one outside of that may be, I don't know, some retail with some multifamily kind of stuff. I mean, so typically there's variety, and the more variety you get in a development, I think the healthier the development is, because it's not all like for like. It allows for some of that. And I think generally speaking, that's what we're just afraid of. A lot of housing developments that go in with this level of density lend themselves to people parking in the street and not taking care of the yard, and the fences fall down. Even if they spend a decent amount of money, there's got to, anyway, these are all personal preferences. But eventually, you know, it's something that the city has to look at and maintaining. And I think it's significantly more dense than other developments that have happened in the city of Belton. other than multifamily. I mean, this would stand alone as the most dense development. But we're hearing words of, we really want to be good stewards of the land. We've been here for a long time. We really see some maybe larger lots and all that. We hear all that, but what we're seeing is the most dense. Yeah. Yeah, this is Three Creeks is 2.6. This is going to 3.7. This is 50% more houses than Three Creeks.
It's topography. Its lot sizes are the same. Sam, what's our design standard for lot sizes? What's our minimum lot sizes for single family one?
SF3 is 5,000. SF2 is 7,500. SF1 is 10,000.
Okay, so we're building to SF3.
The lowest of the single family.
No, well, there was
Of
a
our
40
standards.
foot. Yeah, we're not doing 40 foot.
We're cutting our normal SF1, which is what we're talking about here for the most part, in half. But to David's point too, whatever we sign off on here, we got to live with that forever. Like I said, so it's like, I'm just saying I'm uncomfortable with that that small of a lot size written into this in concrete for the entirety of this development. If there was the mix I'm talking about or whatever, it would make that a whole lot more comfortable to be able to sign off to that. But we would be, the way it's reading right now, we would be signing off to the 50 by 100 for the entirety of this development with no deviation other than the 10% that's higher density.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me. Can I jump in for just a second? This is Cindy.
Please.
To be clear, what we're requesting is just a minimum lot size of a 50. And so if the market naturally lends itself to 60s or 70s, then we have the ability to put in 60s and 70s under the terms of the agreement. And so it isn't that you're signing up completely for 50-foot lots. You are signing up for a minimum of 50-foot lots. And so we are unable to put in 40-foot lots or 35-foot lots. But the market naturally tends to create its own lot mix.
So how many examples of deals that you've done with this that you've actually gone above the minimum required? So how many
I would
times have you gone
say-
into a project, if you can give me some examples of when you went into a project like this, where you actually started to exceed the lot sizes that were defined in the early stages?
I can think of two off the top of my head where we had 40-foot lots and the builders did not want the 40-foot lots. They wanted the 50-foot lots. And so we moved up to 50.
Well, yeah, and that's because that's what you've defined the market is, right? So that's, at least that's what I've heard. But how many times have,
They define the market. The builders define the market.
okay.
We've had some, I like to add to that. We've had some, as you see in the plan, how we create different pods and villages. What that does when we plan it that way, it allows for a builder or two to enter into a pod on a certain, let's say it starts off as one product. And as things progress and prices move up, the school site comes in, all of a sudden that builder has had their sales per month have far exceeded projection. And now they come in and put in their 60-foot product. And then it pushes up price and it pushes up the price of the 50s. It creates some diversity. And then the next builder, and we've had them on projects where it's built up and then it's brought in the higher builder and a higher price point builder. And because the market, the price point for what people will pay and what the amenities offered come in, and then they start, the pricing goes up, the lot size goes up, and it's fitting that need for people who want to be in the community because this community's got things that others do not have.
Yeah, I think you just described an ecosystem that is a healthy ecosystem, that the smaller lots drive growth, which drive larger lots, which drives the value of the smaller lots up, right? But if it's all one size, again, that's the general concern.
Sure.
Is a
That's the
healthy
hard part of
ecosystem
predicting when and where locations.
Mindy, you may want to repeat what you said, but about the minimum.
Right, it is just a minimum. And so naturally it can have 50, 60, 70, 75s.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people that buy two lots next to each other and make a 3-acre place. I mean, that happens, right?
know, the
So,
other-
but the reality is the type of construction that will likely go in here are going to be what we see at Three Creeks, where they go in and there's not going to be there's not going to be custom homes here, right? These are going to be tract homes. Nice homes, but these are going to be speculative, built, maybe some customization at the last phase. So
I'll try to stop talking here, but it's not, I mean, you're saying that, it's the minimum. Well, it's what's written in a legal document. And that's where I'm saying it's not personal. It's that if we write 50 by 100 into this agreement, somebody can come in and follow the letter of the law and they can develop every single one of these lots 50 by 100. And I'm saying that concerns me. So by you saying that's a minimum, that doesn't alleviate my concern whatsoever. The thing that would alleviate my concern is if there was some variety, more variety, maybe starting at a 60 or 65 foot width, but more variety built into this in writing, that brings comfort. But you telling me that 50 is a minimum, that's no comfort whatsoever, because that's what's going to get written into this. And that's what somebody could build to if they want to. And I'm not trying to be argumentative or adversarial, but that's the concern. And the rest of it is just speculation as to what might happen. What we're talking about is what we're going to agree to in writing legally. And that's what I'm concerned with.
I have a question for Brent. Brent, on the slide that we see, I don't know if I don't think we're sharing screen, but
Yeah, I can see it.
does that have a number of lots in there that you've designed? Like, is that 1,775 lots?
It is. We've gone in and you see the rear lot property line, you see all the streets and right of ways, all that's into scale. And typically though, it's rare that we ever do 100 feet deep. It's that minimum's there for a reason, because we get a pinch point in the back. So, your setbacks are typically 20 foot in the front, and the pad, depending on the market and interest rates, it's 70 or 80 feet deep, and then a 20-foot backyard. So a lot of times in this market, we're finding that, that's the typical is a 115 to 120 foot lot, not 100. The 100's there just to catch those, corner lots that are on an odd shape or something. So we're not coming to amend something for like that. But yes, to answer your question, we have lotted that particular plan and it is right at that point. I will say we're again trying to be a little conservative too, is we know working with Angela, we know we have to detain. And so we will have multiple detention ponds around the perimeter of the project. What does that do? That's going to give us more green space. It's going to give us more opportunities to incorporate additional pocket parks. And it's going to chew into some of that 1775 in reality, is because we've got to take care of the engineering and the drainage first. And so it's just so early to try to do that level of engineering at this stage of the game is not normal. But just so you know, there will be more green space and detention that will have to be incorporated into that plan.
Brent, has your site planning to date demonstrated an area for larger lot development? I know you kind of touched on that earlier. Is there some area, the meadow area, that is anticipated to be more large lot development that might be a part of the plan? Without a concept plan in hand or in front of us, I think the council's having a hard time visualizing the layout that gets us to 1775, and if there's some alternative for the larger lots.
Yeah, I think that's intended. That's pretty well laid out. Most of it all at 50 by 120. And so there's not the larger lots incorporated. you know, it's, I hear everybody's point and I respect that. But we do find ourselves very often on projects where we get into these, you know, whether it's the southern end of the project along the creek, south of that primary entry, where the market's going to allow it to, you know, for those larger homes or larger lots. And, you know, if we got a well-programmed community that's got a, you know, one HOA and we have good amenities in elementary school, it's going to help drive it, and it'll drive it in a positive direction. It's just at this stage, we don't have, you know, five projects around us. Like sometimes we have the ability to in DFW to know what the trends and kind of what happens and what builders and create a mix. Cause we have projects where we go in with a mix, but we don't have quite the, you know, it's much more difficult to forecast. What we want to do is control quality and drive those things through having the quality committed in the project and make it different, make it more appealing.
Will there be an HOA?
Yes. There'll be an HOA and there'll be a mud board. But we've got so much river frontage here that there's so much land that will not be developed, right? And what you're looking at on this screen, the core of the white area in there, that's where your lots will be primarily located. And so it's our desire to build as much flexibility in this as we possibly can so we can meet the needs of the developers as the market moves, knowing that the high value lots will be those around the river and will most likely be larger than 50. But today, can we say that? No. So we just go with the minimum, just like we go with minimum development standards. Minimum development standards, 3 Creeks, okay. The Utleys may want more, you know? So it's quality. So it's just our way of creating some flexibility that we do get sales out there, right? Because for us to go down the list of things that we're negotiating or we've in practicality agreed to, we got to have some volume of sales. And so we got to meet the need where it is, not where we think it is. So that's really important. That's why it's really important to us to get this right up front.
Well, I think, and honestly, I mean, again, it's a quality development, and it's a really good location, and it's well timed. I mean, you just hear anybody left of center to slightly right of center is moving to Austin. Yeah. Everybody's moving to Austin, and so and as they're moving to Austin, they can buy a 700 square foot downtown for 1.1 million, or they can drive up here 45 minutes and get something good. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, and we're going to see a lot of that for the next couple of decades. So I think it's good. We're just trying to look out what's for the best development that we can.
Absolutely.
In this
I understand. But just think about the flexibility aspect of things to get it where we meet the market, where it is. And that's our job. That's why we're in it. So.
Yep. Steve, I really appreciate the commitment to all the other things outside of the development that you guys are doing. In Culver Road alone, and not just in front of your development, but commit to do our Culver Road. I'm not sure what 3 Creeks did in terms of road development or other fixed costs outside, but also what you could do in water and sewer, higher rates go on.
That, by the way, that is the benefit of the mud. And that's why we're in this room talking about this today, is because we've got the ability to access a mud, and that provides for those opportunities.
I did have one question about, there was a statement about utilities conveyed to provide, I think was mentioned earlier in the session. So are we responsible for water and sewer lines inside the subdivision when we start charging 1.25%?
Yes. The water and sewer, it's our water system, it's our sewer system, and so we would be responsible for that even after the mud is fully in operation. So yes, we're going to have to continue to maintain that. When there's a line break, we're going to have to send our city folks out to fix that. We have to set the meters and do the taps. And so we're still involved. And that's why we really need to ensure full recovery of that. And then the 1.25 times helps on operations to a degree to help the maintenance of that.
And then are internal road standards built to city standards or county standards?
City standards. So this is an urban subdivision essentially in the county. And so curb and gutter, storm drainage, all those things would meet our City of Belton design standards for the subdivision regs.
So this is a new thought. I'm sorry for that, but part of we've got all this water drainage, retainage, all that stuff. We've got this water fund, the rain tax and all that stuff. How's that handled in something like this close to the water? I mean, I guess that's just managed by the county as far as Texas environmental quality, TCEQ, all that stuff?
Is that for me or for staff? Happy to answer.
Since this is going to be in the county will essentially be responsible for maintenance. Generally, the county does not maintain detention ponds. Regardless, though, they have to be adhering to, FEMA floodplain procedures, TCQ water quality. They are so close to the floodplain, so detention may or may not be desirable because of the calculations. Those can be worked out later. It's unclear how and who will maintain detention ponds.
I would suggest that we look at that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Typically
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the district is responsible for putting in the water, sewer, drainage, and road facilities. And so the district will be maintaining any of the facilities that it owns, and typically districts will own the detention facilities and will maintain.
Well, the concern is that counties are not required to have the same type of retention and detention that cities are, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And if this were to be
Yes.
part of the city and it were to be substandard for a city, then we would have to go in, and there may be buildable issues, like people have already built in an area where it may require a retention or detention pond. So we should probably at least look at that as far as identifying areas that if it were in the city, and again, maybe because it's so close to the river that there is no concern and it just goes in the river. But I don't know that that's the case.
We would review the plat according to our subdivision design standards. It's an ETJ plat. Our subdivision regs apply in the ETJ.
Okay.
Angela would be looking for detention pond and conveyance of all the drainage just in this normal fashion. If there's a maintenance issue for a pond, the pond would be identified on the plat as a tract, and the HOA would be responsible.
Yeah,
for its
like
maintenance.
she was saying. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Sam was
I think
correct.
Mandy and our DA, we proposed to follow all the city technical standards as well.
Okay.
We'll be following the city standards, a higher standard versus a county standard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Craig, any questions? No, I'm good. Been pretty quiet, but it does concern me as well if we're looking at the whole thing, minimum standard being SF3. That just doesn't make sense. I realize it's just the minimum standard. It can be bigger, but we got to work that out.
I know we're getting close on time, but we
Close on
really
time.
need
I
to
want
have
Mr.
some.
Utley to have the last word.
Sure,
since-
we need to have some direction from the council if at all possible, or give direction to us and to the developer to try to see where we go from here.
Well, Sam, we're a landowner first, and not a developer. So, and that is, I think, what we really want to make sure y'all understand. The Udleys own this land and have owned it, and will continue to own it if it doesn't end up being a single family subdivision. Will it be that? Or will it not? It's kind of the question. And that's why we're here today to we've outlined a plan and an agreement that we believe is reasonable in its approach. Understand that there's density concerns, but knowing that long term, this density is not probably going to prevail. it's going to be something less. We don't know that today. And what we're trying to do is make sure we set this development up for success. Mud doesn't work if you don't sell houses. It doesn't work. We need the maximum flexibility to sell houses. We could have asked for 40s. We didn't, which we think would be unreasonable. We think 50s are reasonable as a minimum standard. And so for that, we have also outlined a number of things that we want to do for this surrounding community. Pay our fair share for sewer and water, pay our fair share on our rates, water and sewer rates. We want to make sure that Toll Bridge gets improved. We've set aside a tremendous amount of right-of-way for all this to exist. And so I want you just to know that we ask council to be very sensitive to that, just like we're trying to be sensitive to the community. And our request is really based on a flexibility request, not on something we think will actually occur in the future, but we have no way of knowing. So therefore we cannot put it in an agreement and will not. So I do appreciate the council's time. Our whole team appreciates your time and your willingness to work with us. And we look forward to some resolution on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Etley. Appreciate it. Mr. Listy, what was your request, please?
Yeah, certainly heard what the council has said. I'm not quite sure where we go from here in terms of trying to achieve an agreement. We certainly will get with the applicant and try to see if they have an alternate proposal for addressing the density question. In terms of what's in the proposal before you right now, they are clearly minimums, but certainly it could be built to that. And so that's what the council has to keep in mind as we look down the road. So if there's some room for discussion, negotiation on that, some commitment to a layout, a site plan, a concept plan that would give the council a little bit more comfort level, we certainly could work on that and try to come back to you at the appropriate time.
I think we've all agreed it's going to be a quality project that we can be proud of, but I hear a good percentage of the council is very concerned about the density issue. So maybe that's something we just need to sit back, think about, and possibly negotiate. I hear ideas with townhomes, et cetera, that could be explored that might allay some of the concerns that I hear from other council members, if that's possible. So that would be my suggestion at this point.
1,500.
Were any of the lots in Three Creeks bigger than the 50-foot frontage?
They are, I believe. I don't. The minimum is written similar to this, basically.
Right. That's
But
my point. Did it in fact morph?
But there certainly are some that are larger. I think in the initial layout, there was a view that some of the choice locations that certainly had some greater views were tended to be the larger lots. So there was some, if not commitment to that, at least expression that these are the areas that we would expect larger lots, and these are the areas where townhouses. So some evaluation or review of that might help the council see what the developer's proposing.
As Brent brought up, there's not a lot of immediately surrounding developments to say, okay, what is the market? But there are some others around that I think we could look at to say, does the market in fact currently bear more than 50 by 100? And I think we'll find that there is, but I think we can do some more research in our surrounding area and see what that looks like, and then perhaps roll that into the mix of data available.
We really just need to know where to go from here. I mean, do we bring this back to the council and let y'all vote on this proposal? I mean, they have told us this is the proposal. And we need to know whether to keep having meetings.
Well, no, I mean, there's 7 individuals with 7 individual opinions that may or may not agree with the current proposal, and we can just roll the dice and go where it is, because I don't think we've got unanimity.
That's what I'm asking. I mean, do we need to bring this back to a regular council agenda
It all
item?
depends on if we want to if we want to vote on it or if we want
That's
unanimity.
kind of up to the
That's
the
up to the developer.
landowner,
Right.
if they want to roll those
No,
dice. I mean,
I just,
my,
I need them to
my-
hear that.
my opinion today, if you want my opinion today, and my direction today is, I don't feel comfortable with doing the entire development as written, other than 10% in a 50 by 100 lots. I don't feel comfortable signing off on that. That's my direction, in my opinion. So,
And that's what they need to hear.
you know, and I think I kind of made that clear, some of the alternatives and things that I'd like to see. It's just up to them whether they want to put in the extra time and effort to
It could be a
see if-
6-1 vote. It could
see
be a
if they
4-3
can make
vote. It could
something
be a,
like that work. But we don't know how everybody's going to vote unless you want to.
yeah, and we don't need to get into that.
We can't do that.
That's not a legal thing. That's
No.
right. So-
I think where we are right now is really to just ask the applicant to review what the council has suggested, see if they want to come back with something alternative, or if they want to vote up or down on the
Yeah.
proposal as it is right now.
Yeah.
And we'll take that direction and put it on the agenda appropriately.
Well, I think that's what I'm hearing from the majority of the council is go forward with it the way you just stated. Any other comments before we adjourn this work session? Thank you.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Body break.
I'll get out of that. Okay, so when do you want this back? Probably tomorrow. Okay, hold on. Okay.
Talks about the ones that are included in here, and then only certain ones that are not.
And in fact, I've never done.
It's now.
No.
Let's see how many others we got.
Thank you. Oh, one of the buttons I had a hard time getting to engage. Oh, no. Yes, sir. Tomorrow at 11. Okay. How about you?
Friday at 5:30, I think.
What's tomorrow? Vaccine, hopefully. Oh, where are you getting that? She sent out an email earlier today that said that they had some at the Temple Fire Department. Oh. So you probably need to check and see if you can get on their list.
Yeah. You said go ahead? Okay. Good afternoon again. For those of you who are full-time meeting folks, welcome to the Belton City Council meeting. Today, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led, the U.S. flag will be led by Councilmember David K. Lee. The Texas Pledge will be done by City Manager Sam Listy. You going to do them both?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Pray with me, please. Father God, we come to you in Jesus' name. It's our desire that, and our prayer, that you will be with us, that you will guide us, that your Spirit will lead us to the right decisions that bring you honor and glory for the good of this city and all that are in it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sam, for the double duty. Thank you, Craig. Called this meeting to order this afternoon. Do we have any public comments today? Okay, thank you. Just remind everyone that you do have a right to do that should you choose. Item 3 is to receive child safety fee funds in the amount of $21,930 from Bell County.
Mr. Listy.
Shay Ludicky here to present that to us today.
Yes, howdy, Mayor, Council, thank you. My name is Shay Ludicky. I'm your Bell County Tax Assessor Collector. Normally a commissioner would join me to represent Bell County, but I'm here by myself this evening. This year was a challenging year. Our total registration fees are down about 5% when compared to 2019. That's roughly about 15 to 20,000 vehicles that are not current because, and this is all because of COVID. This is across the county. The governor, he issued the waiver in March of this year due to COVID, waiving the registration penalties. So you didn't have to renew your vehicles and therefore we're not collecting that money. Well, in December 15th, 2020, this last year, about a month ago, the governor lifted that waiver. Everybody now has until April 14th. He gave us 120 days from the time he lifted it to register your vehicle. So we should start collecting the rest of that revenue that we missed out on in 2019. With that said, we did collect $1.50 on registering 276,739 vehicles across the county. Still quite a bit, and we're still about 20,000 low. Since the program started in 2001, Bell County has distributed $386,592.43 to the city of Belton. I'm going to go ahead and read this next letter and present y'all the check. According to the Transportation Code, Chapter 502.403, the county tax assessor collector may collect an additional $1.50 per vehicle registration, except for those exempt as established by code, with the approval of the Commissioner's Court. The funds must be spent on existing crossing guard programs. If the school district does not have a crossing guard program, the funds may be spent on programs designed to enhance child safety, health, or nutrition, including child abuse prevention and intervention, and drug and alcohol abuse prevention, or for programs designed to enhance public safety and security in accordance with Article 102.014, Section G of the Code of Criminal Procedure. The check for this year's allocation for Belton is $21,930.18. A copy of this notification was also sent to Belton Independent School District. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and thank you for presenting the check. And those of you who have been around a while know that those funds are always passed through directly to Belton Independent School District for crossing guards and other safety factors
I will
for
assure
the
you,
kids.
Connie has already scheduled me for the January 25th meeting of the school board. So I'll
I
be
knew they
presenting
would
the
want
check
their money.
at that time.
So thank you, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much. We appreciate it.
Most cities, statute says we have to give it to the municipalities. I wish the statute said that we give it to the school district because that's what all cities end up doing anyways. So
Well, it's more fun this way. We get to give them the check. So thank you very much.
thank you.
Items 4 through 10 are in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda prior to voting. I'll read the consent agenda. Item 4, consider minutes of the December 8th, 2020 council meeting. Item 5, consider appointments, and I will read those. Library Board of Directors, Chad Green. Building and Standards Commission, regular replacement Joe Schaub. Alternates Nicole Fisher, Ricardo De Leon, and Cindy Black. Another alternate will be presented at a future meeting. Item 6, authorize an agreement with Fleet Core Technologies Operating Company through the National Intergovernmental Purchasing Alliance Purchasing Cooperative for the purchase of fuel for city vehicles and equipment. Item 7, conduct an annual review of the City of Belton's fund balance policy and consider the adoption of a resolution attesting to the review and readoption thereof. Item 8, conduct an annual review of the City of Belton's debt policy and consider the adoption of a resolution attesting to the review and readoption thereof. Item 9, conduct an annual review of the City of Belton's investment policy and consider the adoption of a resolution attesting to the review and readoption thereof. And item 10, consider authorizing the following purchases of vehicles as provided for in the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund. Light duty truck for the Water Department, light duty truck for the Street Department, light duty truck for Belton for the Building Maintenance Department, also for the Water Metering Department and the Parks Department. Anyone wish to pull any of those items? If not, I would accept a motion.
I move we approve items 4 through 10 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the items pass. Thank you. Item number 11 on the regular agenda is to consider a final plat of Southwood Hills Phase 3 comprising 15.743 acres located on the west side of Connell Street, south of Layla Lane, and north of Huey Drive. And I think Tina Moore is going to present that item for us. There you are. Thank you,
Yes, sir,
Tina.
I am. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. As stated, here is the location of the property. Here is Connell Drive. It is west of Connell. It is south of Layla Drive and just north of Huey Drive. This plat consists of 15.73 acres. It has 2 blocks and 3 lots. Here is the proposed future development. It is a deluxe style apartment consisting of 58 duplexes, 116 units, and a leasing office. This plat is consistent with the preliminary plat that was approved in September of 2019. The zoning for this property has a couple of different zonings. The first one is planned development multifamily. And with that, it allows for some reductions in setback. A reduction for the front yard setback went from 25 to 15 feet, and the rear yard setback was reduced from 20 to 15 feet. The other zoning is Office 1 zoning, and that's for the leasing office off of Connell Drive. And that one actually has no reductions and it meets the requirements. For the subdivision, water will be extended from west of the subdivision off of Southwest Parkway down Shray Road, which is a road proposed for this development. And that is going to be an 8-inch line, and there will be private connections to serve the duplexes. There's also an 8-inch sewer line proposed that's also going to connect from Southwest Parkway and connect to a 10-inch line off of Connell Drive. And there will also be private connections to serve the duplexes. For right-of-way, there is Connell Street, which is classified as a major collector that requires 80 feet of right-of-way, and it currently has 52. The applicant will be dedicating 14 feet of right-of-way with this application. Stray Road, which is proposed with this plat, is a local road, and that will consist of 50 foot of right-of-way with 31 foot of pavement and curb and gutter. Closer to the intersection of Connell, Stray Road will increase in the right-of-way from 50 to 56, and the pavement would be 37 to allow for turning movements in the subdivision, in and out of the subdivision. Perimeter street improvements are required for Connell. The applicant is responsible for providing 18.5 foot of pavement on Connell. This is similar to other developments in this general area. There is a 5-foot sidewalk requirement also required off of Connell, and the applicant is proposing to construct that with this development. There are 2 on-site detention ponds, one right here and one over here, that will be privately owned and maintained by the HOA. For parkland fees with this development, we're looking at $23,200 that would be used to develop Liberty Park within walking distance from this development. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on December the 22nd, and they unanimously approved this plat. There was some conditions with our staff comments. Staff has provided an additional review after the meeting, and the applicant is aware of the comments that are provided with the letter dated December 28th. Staff recommends approving this plat. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him or for myself. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Mrs. Moore? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move we approve the final plat of Southwood Hills Phase 3.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. None, and the motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Item 12, consider adoption of resolution supporting Texas Housing Developers LLC's tax credit application to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs for 2 apartment rehabilitation projects for low and moderate income persons, including Country Square Apartments at 724 East Avenue N and the Montrose Turtle Creek Apartments at 2200 North Montrose Place. Mr. Listy.
Council. This item comes to you today in order to review a request for tax credits. We've had a number of requests come before the council in the past for tax credit projects that were new construction, but this is a different approach. This is a rehabilitation of 2 existing projects. There we go. Thank you. You got it. Appreciate it. All righty. We have a new firm that's in the application cycle right now. Texas Housing Developers is the name of the firm. They have submitted a pre-application to TDHCA for rehabilitation tax credits. The firm has experience primarily in the Midwest, as you saw in the packet of information that they have provided. More recently, they've moved into Texas, into a few cities. The properties that are involved in this application include a total of 222 units, 80 units in Country Square Apartments on East Avenue N, and 142 units, which is the Montrose Turtle Creek facility on North Montrose Place. They did submit a pre-application to TDHCA on the 7th of January, and a final application is due in March 1st. How do you advance it? There we go. Thank you. Again, the 724 East Avenue N project, this is the Country Square Apartments. There's 80 units in that complex, and the applicant is proposing a name change to Cherry Village Apartments. Next slide. 2200 Montrose Place. This project combines 2 different named units right now, the Montrose Apartments and Turtle Creek Apartments. There's 142 units total. They're proposing a name change to Montrose Valley Apartments in this location. So again, 2 existing apartment complexes right now that are proposed for rehabilitation. Next slide. In working with the applicant for this project, they have estimated that they will spend approximately $40,000 per unit, totaling almost $9 million to bring the properties to like new condition. These units would all remain what they are now, which is essentially rent and income restricted for households at or below 60% of AMI, the average median income in the area. And we've given you a table in your packet that shows what that amount is. The properties would remain on the tax rolls. They're on the tax rolls now, and they would remain on the tax rolls. And you certainly would expect some increase in value as a result of the investment. Not the full amount, but certainly some as they go through this major rehabilitation. As a part of TDHCA's requirement, we are required to demonstrate support for the project, a minimum $250 required for each of the 2 projects. We're proposing slight increase of that, $1,000 each, $2,000 total for the 2 facilities, 2 complexes. And we would take that out of the permit value, which we expect to be in the $30,000 range for these renovations. Next slide. Just to mention a couple of other items, we did, look into the company some to some degree. I've had some conversation with Barbara Bozon, who is the executive director of the Central Texas Housing Consortium, who handles the projects in the city of Belton and in the city of Temple. And she recognized that these projects are rural housing development, very, very challenging projects to get rehabbed and to secure and to maintain those facilities. And these kinds of revenues through the TDHCA would be a real asset for us to have the benefit of that in the community, to have them rehab for the folks that would be housed there. And so she was very strongly recommending the project. We also reached out to one of the Texas locations where they have done a project, San Angelo, And Bob Van Til touched base with Robert Salas in San Angelo, and Four Corners Development, one of the subsidiaries here, did a seniors project there in San Angelo, and very successful, and amenities were addressed, and was really positive asset in the community. So we also have a representative of the applicant on the line, streaming with us. Josefina Garcia is a representative of the development company, Texas Housing Developers, and is available for any questions you might have. This seems like it's a good project for the city of Belton. We would be the beneficiary of the tax credits where the improvements would occur here and would benefit our residents, and certainly recommend approval of this. There's 2 resolutions in your packet that would address the development, again, allocating $1,000 each in reduced permit fees. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
This sounds like an outstanding project for the folks who live in those developments and the city as well. It's always hard to maintain older properties, and these folks are willing to put quite a bit of money, $9 million total, I believe it is, into redoing these. It sounds like a win-win for everyone involved. Any comments from council? Questions?
Right.
But I'm just curious as to what happens to the residents while they're remodeling these.
Yes, I asked Josefina to address that question. Josefina, can you address that question during the?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year to you all. Definitely a good question that we regularly get. We actually work with a relocation expert who will facilitate the whole process. We will provide all the moving expenses and supplies to the residents, and we plan our rehabilitation in phases well ahead of time. So we coordinate with the relocation specialist, start informing the tenants of the phases and when they will be affected by this, supply them with boxes and anything that they might need to pack their units, as well as coordinating whether they want to stay with relatives or they need a place to stay, whether that be a hotel, or in some instances, when we have residents who volunteer to stay off-site for the duration. We've rented houses in the area to put them in, but we facilitate the whole process in the move, keeping them housed, and then moving them back in.
What's your timeline?
Well, the timeline right now, we'll submit the tax credit application, the full application in March. We hope to hear back in April or May. Once we hear back, we'll start working with rural development. Part of the process is actually, so we'll have the tax credit application, and once we're awarded, we have to go through RD because we're actually taking on the debt that property has right now. So we have to go through a process with them. Once we have that approval from them, then we'll move towards closing, and the actual rehabilitation will take approximately 9 to 12 months because these are a little bit bigger.
And Josefina, one other question. It's our understanding that the firm is acquiring these properties regardless of the approval of the tax credit application. Could you address that?
Correct. So we have already entered into purchase agreements with the seller, with a person who currently owns these properties. We will be going through the RD transfer process regardless of the tax credit application. Of course, we definitely want to acquire these for the rehabilitation, and that's the only part that's going to be contingent upon approval. The rehab's contingent upon approval of the tax credit application, but the acquisition is not. That we will move forward with whether the application is successful or not.
Thank you.
There might have been one question on the part of the council about the Turtle Creek name. The Montrose Turtle Creek Apartments have that name on their sign. That's not to be confused with the Turtle Creek location right off of Main Street that's owned by Ray Severn. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And they're changing that name to make it less confusing.
Correct.
So
Yes,
that's
they are.
probably a good thing as well.
I do have a
questions
question.
or comments?
Are you guys anticipating any rate increases immediately that would price some of these people out of their current locations?
We cannot do that. So we have to stay within the guidelines of the average median income anyway. We will be regulated by TDHCA and rural development. So even if we thought it was necessary, that would not be the case. Tenants will still go through their certification process to meet the income requirements, and tenants will remain eligible in any units that have rental assistance. So it will remain income-based, and there'll be no effect to the tenants, except of course, whatever changes in income they have internally in their household.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do I hear a motion to approve those 2 tax credit applications? So
Yeah, I
moved.
think, yep, second. Yep, it's a great project.
Amen.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Thank you very much for your
Thank you, Josephine.
investment in the city of Belton. We appreciate that. Look forward to the rehabilitation for all those folks living there.
We do also, and thank you so much for giving us your attention and support.
You're most welcome. Item 13, consider authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for the Loop 121 Utility Relocations Project and any change orders associated with the contract not to exceed the amount authorized under state law. Ms. Point, I think you're going to present that.
Yes, sir. All right. A little bit of background. We all know the Loop 121 is proposed to be widened. That's going to be a TxDOT project. Back in the summer, in 2019 through the summer of 2020, staff has worked diligently with TxDOT because with the widening of the project, they have identified a number of utility conflicts. We're looped into the project as in we're just one of the utilities that are in conflict. They're working with Encore, Atmos, and a lot of the telecom utilities as well. They found dozens of conflicts. We diligently and tirelessly worked with them and reduced it down to 15. We potholed our own utilities to prove to them that most of those conflicts they identified were not actually conflicts and they can stay right where they are. So we landed on 15 that had to be removed or moved, not removed. In August of 2020, TxDOT notified the city that the utilities had to be moved by July 2020 to be right ahead of the road work. So had to be moved. Again, they have to be moved because they are located in TxDOT right away and in conflict with pavement trail that could not be moved, grading work that basically will expose the line, or stormwater infrastructure, because a lot of the stormwater is going underground instead of open ditches. We at the city must bear the full cost of such relocation because they are located in TxDOT right of way and not in city dedicated easements. So you can see on this map, there's a number of red dots. Those are in the general location of the relocations. So again, most of the relocations are water line, and that's because the water line is located where, say, a new curb inlet is going, a new head wall, there's a drainage pipe. A lot of it is drainage related, where the conflicts are. There's 2 hydrants that are going to be in the back of the curb line, and things of that nature. So September 2020, city contracted with KPA to design and bid the relocations project. During that time, unfortunately, TxDOT came up with a few additional conflicts. KPA was able to work with them with us, and we were able to reduce them down to 14 conflicts. We are understanding that additional conflicts may be identified by TxDOT, especially during construction, but we are dedicated to continue to work with TxDOT to avoid any work that is not necessary. In November of 2020, these utility relocations, the design work was completed and we bid it on December 15th. The engineer's OPCC was about $1 million, and we agreed that that was an appropriate amount for the amount of work to be done. We did receive 7 bids for that, and the low bidder was CSP Utilities out of Waco. And you can see the wide range of bids that we received. CSP came in at $614,000, and the owner of CSP and the superintendent is here with us, Mark and Brandon. Appreciate all their help, and we'll talk a little bit more about their company in a minute. But again, very wide range. CSP bid was 39% lower than the OPCC and $250,000 less than the next second lowest bidder. although we should be jumping for joy that this was a lot less, it is a little concerning. And we have talked at length with CSP, so this is nothing surprising to them. We expressed these concerns, so I feel very confident about talking about this. So with that concern, and we weren't familiar with CSP, we asked for a lot of documentation. We asked for the references, equipment list, financial statements, and we even conducted an in-person review. And so I'm going to walk you through some of our concerns and some of our discussions and conclusions. So CSP is a sector of Cornerstone Plumbing. So they're a plumbing business getting into the utility construction business. So they're doing business as CSP Utilities. Them as a company, they have not performed a lot of large utility projects, but the owner, Mark and Brandon here, come with decades of experience of this type of work. So we feel very confident in their ability as professionals, although the company themselves has not had a lot of experience. They have recently completed a $1.2 million stormwater project in Temple. The references on that job were good. We did check all of the references at length, and there were no what I would call red flags. Everything was satisfactory and great references. They will be performing most of the work internally. They are subcontracting some of the work, but honestly, any large contractor would subcontract what they are also going to subcontract. They do not own a lot of equipment themselves, but they do rent most of their equipment. They feel confident that their rental equipment will be available. They don't have a lot of experience working in TxDOT right-of-way, but they addressed our concerns with working in TxDOT right-of-way, which they understand the importance of proper traffic control and erosion control. We did ask, are your bid prices correct? And did we miss anything? And they confirmed that their bid prices are correct and they are valid. We asked, how are you going to get this job done on time? And are you going to be dedicated to our job? And they said, yes, they will dedicate a 6-man crew to this project. And they are ready to begin February 1st as they're wrapping up other projects. They feel confident they can complete this job on time, bearing, of course, any unforeseen circumstances and conditions that any contractor would come across. We do feel confident that they can complete this job according to the plans on time and on budget. I don't see any red flags. So there you go. As far as schedule, tonight is the bid award recommendation. If awarded tonight, we'll execute their contracts, hold a pre-construction meeting, and start around February 1st. That will allow us to complete construction by July 1st, which is our deadline from TxDOT. I'm sorry, it is 2021. Yes, sir. Thank you. The funding on this job, the contract is for $614,102. There may be some unforeseen change orders. That is normal for any construction project. This is a must-do project. It was sort of a surprise project, even though we knew it was coming. We didn't know the extent of it as we were working with TxDOT. We do propose funding this project using the water and sewer fund balance. We feel like this is a great candidate to use that pot of money for. After this project is expended, the fund balance will still have about $6 million in it, which is above our 3-month minimum operating, which that equates to about $2.6 million. So we wanted to give you an idea of what funding would be like. Would love to answer any questions that you guys have. Rick Kasberg is here as well from KPA. So this is our recommendation is to authorize that contract with CSP. But again, I would love to answer any questions you might have.
What are our remedies if they're not able to do this in a timely fashion?
That's a great question. Rick, if you can help me answer that, but they are bonded. They will be bonded. There's performance bonds, payment bonds. So if for some reason CSP cannot perform and they pull off the job, or if it's unsatisfactory work, we can file a claim at the bond level.
That's the answer.
Other questions or comments, concerns?
If I may.
Can you come to the?
If you might, would you mind telling us your name and address, even though we know who you are?
Rick Kasberg, 2103 Wheat Road, Belton, Texas.
Thank you.
One big part of this project is boring underneath the loop. I'd say it's probably 40% of it or so. Their subcontractor is Shaw's, who we've used hundreds of times throughout my career. So that gave us a little bit of comfort level with that. And then these two gentlemen, as Angela stated, have been in the utility business for 20, 30 years, Mark and Brandon. And there's an old saying about companies. Companies don't have experience, people do. So that's the basis of our group review. You know, we strongly believe it's $1 million project, which you can see. These guys are wanting to start a company. They have experience. So we didn't want to overlook that massive discount, frankly. Yes, it is. It's good engineering is what did it.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate the follow-up, and the bonds will be in place as a remedy just in case, but it's great to save money and get a good project done. We appreciate everybody involved. Any other questions or comments about this?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, and the motion passes. There being no further business to come before the council today, we